So Keri, we talked a lot about your story and stuff, but here's my big question to you. I'm gonna throw it down because we're only gonna do 25 minutes. Here's my big question to you. Why do people have so many issues regarding attracting money? Like you would think it's like a very basic thing, and to me, this is the number one thing that I hear about from so many business owners, and I just know myself. Like I had my share fair struggle. Don't you get me wrong, but like my struggle where it manifested itself in the most like intense way in terms of lack of self-worth, lack of confidence, was around attracting money. What's the noise? What's the deal? Why do people do that? Like why is it so common?
That people have trouble attracting money.
That people create maybe trouble or have mindset trouble, or what is the trouble around? The question is, what is the actual trouble around mindset? I'm sorry, the actual trouble around money, attracting money.
What is the actual trouble around attracting money? Well, there's so much to that question. It's loaded, isn't it? So one being, we don't believe it. We don't believe that we can have it. On a global scale, right? We've talked about the addiction to struggle, right? And we've been conditioned to struggle. We've been conditioned to believe that we have to be poor and broke and whatever, and without money. Even with wealth, we've been conditioned to believe that there's going to be hardship. If you look from a global scale around like debt, right? What keeps happening? We just keep printing money and putting more and more debt. And each time they print money and there's more debt created, that means that there's more debt on each human being created. Like in theory, I wrote in my book, I can't remember exactly the number, but it was like $140,000 per person of debt that we each carry, just from a US perspective, right? From the debt. And that's a lot over someone's head, right? And so we're always, doesn't matter if it's a personal level from a global scale, like what we're learning is debt. What we're learning is that that's what happens. What we're learning is that we can just go out and print money and go do what we ever want and blah, blah, blah. And so people get into credit card debt and all that kind of stuff. And then...
It sounds like there's always a negative association, right? Like there's always a negative weight around any money. So like you said, like you can go and do whatever you want, but in the same token, then I'll be saddled if I'm starting at 140 anyway, which is like, I mean, that's like what is that? That's like film school at that point, like, but like you're starting at 140 and then on top of that, that's, so why would I even want to attract it, right?
Well, I think it's just that we're being taught that, like we're being conditioned that debt is the way to be. Right? And that we can do these things and no one's being taught, like, how do we, I mean, literally from a very physical perspective, we're not being taught from a big picture. How do we hold money? How do we actually receive money? How do we feel worthy to create money? What do we do to manage money? Who's teaching that? Like in schools, it's sad, right? Nothing's being taught about money in schools. So we're not being taught about it from the forefront, right? And then from a personal perspective, we come in, I mean, there's so many layers to this, right? We can come in from past lives and things that have happened from our past experiences, from traumatic stuff, from within the womb, from when we were little, from whatever the conditioning of our parents was. And then we take that and we hold that, right? And we have all these traumatic experiences within ourselves, and then we hold shadow. And I think ultimately most of what's happening for people around money is in their shadow, and they can't look at it, they won't see it. They're blaming other people, they're blaming other experiences, they're blaming the outside. The economy sucks, this happens. I mean, I hear it all the time. Oh, I can't grow my business because, especially right now, the economy sucks, people don't have money, blah, 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 right? So we make these excuses. I'm like, but it's bullshit, because many people will become millionaires out of this, right? Many people will shift their entire relationship to money through this experience of this lockdown period right now, or the corona, or the crazy economy that's going on. So it's really looking at within as to our own beliefs around money and how we are conditioned to believe. And even from and we've had these conversations too, even from a perspective of having wealth, there's been much of my own conditioning that I've had to undo, that the woman's not supposed to be the one to make money, that we're supposed to be on the arm of the man. And so that was conditioning that stopped me for fucking ever, right? I'm supposed to support my man and he's supposed to be the one in the front because that's what I was trained to believe. And so it stopped me from doing the things I was meant to do in my life because I supported him. And, so it doesn't matter whether we've grown up in money or not grown up in money, there's going to be conditioning. And the other thing around wealth conditioning as well, so often people are led to believe that they have to do it a certain way, right? The family made it this way. You're going to have to follow the family footsteps. You have to take the family business. And then you end up selling your soul out for not doing what your heart really desires and what your purpose is. And so then you either feel crappy your whole life because you're not doing what you desire, and you can end up sick, miserable, depressed, whatever, not living a fulfilled life because you're living someone else's path and purpose. And or you can take that and actually run it into the ground because it wasn't yours to begin with, right?
So this you bring up a really good point, which is like, it's almost like who benefits from all this negative, all these negative associations with money, whether it be from like debt, like you're saying, or whether it be from feeling worthy, holding space for, like, who benefits from us being fucked up about money?
The global financial elite.
I know, Keri, go all out on this one. I want to hear your stance on this.
It's interesting because as I started doing this research for my book, so my book called The New Wealth, Magnetize Abundance, Hold Your Wealth, and Leave a Legacy. As I started doing more and more research around the current financial situation and what's happening in the world from a bigger picture, I really started diving into this global financial elite. Now, most people think that we have these, well, we do. We have the billionaires, the Richard Bransons, the Donald Trumps, the Warren Buffetts, right? Like all these Bill Gates, these amazing billionaires of the world, Jeff Bezos, all that stuff, right? And people think that they are the most wealthy people on the planet. But it's not true. There's people who have more money than them. And they're the ones who are running the entire financial system. They have so much money. It's like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, and they have and more. There's about, I think, 30 families or something across the board. Don't quote me on that. But it's a very small amount of people. And they have so much money, it's not even like, there's not even a number for it. And because of that, they are running amongst these top countries within our like bank systems on top of it, and keeping it so that they keep making more money. And so they win and they win and they win and they make more and more and more money off of us growing our wealth or not growing our wealth.
See, and then so it becomes like a question of like, then too, if they're doing all that, right, then it's like we don't need to necessarily be at that level of wealth though, right? Like that's not conducive to most. I mean, that's a different level of, not person, but like you always talk about it. I love how you're like the jump from like $100,000 business to a $500,000 or $1 million business. Like there's a shift that happens there, like on a very personal level that needs to happen for that to actually occur, right? So how does someone go from like if they're growing up in this society where those big tycoons are like sitting above you, controlling the thing, like how, and we have all these constrictions around money, like how have you found people can shift that and create more abundance and create more wealth that's conducive for that?
It's a personal journey, like regardless. I mean, you and I are never going to have that level of wealth, is that right? Like
I don't know, I think I'm pretty adorable.
You are pretty adorable, but your sweet adorable face is not going to get you to the global financial elite. I'm pretty sure.
Let's agree to disagree.
But regardless of what they're doing, right? And the whole thing about this, and I think the beautiful thing about where we are in the world and this concept of the new wealth is that we're moving into our own sovereignty, right? So when we look at the banking system now and life in general, right? Like politics, all of this stuff, and especially right now, because we're going through these elections, right? We have this, like, we can put our, sorry, Healy finished. We can put
that sound when the Healy goes off makes me so happy. I feel so accomplished. I love the Healy. If you were watching this, should we do an ad? Can you do a quick ad for the Healy?
Do an ad for the Healy?
Yeah.
Healy, look, I'm using my Healy. Healy is this really amazing, like, it's funny that it went off now, right? Because we're talking about raising our vibrations, because it's personal, right? So, and I'll do this, but Healy is this amazing little device that shifts your consciousness, that shifts the vibration of your body, your frequencies. And in order to become sovereign, right? In order to be able to shift our energy around money and the way that we show up in this world, we have to be able to shift our vibration. And as I was just saying, really interestingly, when we look at what's going on in the world right now and all of the chaos, all of this, I mean, it doesn't matter where we sit on the fence with masks, COVID, politics, blah, blah, blah. It's separation, right? None of it is right or wrong. There can be proof for anything. In any way that we want to look at things right now, you can find proof to either side of any story. And it's regardless of politics, from food to exercise to anything, right? We can find proof to anything that we want. And so in order to rise above, I think as we believe, as we start to shift into this new wealth, into this new consciousness on the planet, in order to rise above it, we actually literally rise above it. We rise above it in our thinking and we rise above it in our vibrations. And right now, the world is stuck in a place of lack, scarcity, fear, separation, greed. And it doesn't, I mean, on all sides of the story, right? And that's what's creating this unrest. And that's what creates suffering because we're conditioned to believe that that's how life has to be. But anybody who knows anything about mindset will know that what we think about, we get, right? So if we can think about any of this stuff and create separation and fear and greed and guilt and all that stuff, we can also then think about how do we create love, peace, joy, and abundance, right? And so if we focus on that, that's what we start to get. But at the end of the day, most people don't believe it actually to be true. Most people think that we can't actually have this experience of life.
Well, belief has been fucked. Like, right? Belief system. Like, let's get into this, right? Belief system in general. What is real? What is not? Like, you're absolutely right. Like, it's challenging for me to hear you say it. Of course, every conversation with you, I always walk away like, oh man, I'm even more confused than before because Keri got me to see the other side of the other side of the other side. You know, like you're really good at that. But like, you're absolutely right. Belief. And I don't mean the religious sense or whatever. Like, it's you know, every day we're seeing counter things like hypocrisy and counter and like, well, there's proof that it's so frustrating. But you're absolutely right though. Like I like even like I had a rough, it's Wednesday, we're shooting this on a Wednesday, but like I had a challenging week thus far with like my computer and technical issues. And I couldn't in my head, I was like, I was able to separate that from the abundance, the intention that I set because I watched your class on setting intentions. And Sunday nights, I'm very committed. I set my intention for what I want to do as you know, in sales this week. And I was like, the whole time I was freaking out. Last night, I was like, take a moment, Ron, and let's wait. Universe, I'm sorry for freaking out, but I still feel worthy, and there's room, and I still believe, like I really believe that I will make this number this week. And so, like literally today, I got a phone call from someone that they were like, yeah, let's do this project, and I was like, great, week is good. All right, now I can relax, you know. So, but I didn't have that belief system before. Like, how do people, amidst this chaos and craziness, how do people start creating and integrating a solid belief system around money? I don't mean religious, I don't mean spiritual, about that they are deserving of, even if it is just, you know, whatever they need for the month or right? Like, how do they start really attracting that stuff in and holding space for it?
So it starts with deciding, you know, like we have to decide that that's what we want to do and that we're going to go all in no matter what, right? Because it's not necessarily, it can come immediately, right? As you just saw, right? And it happens a lot, right? But you had to decide first. And then, Keely, right? One of my favorite things about it is we raise our vibrations. Because if we are, and like even the things like I do with my spiral work or emotional clearing work, right? It's all about shifting the vibration and releasing the emotions, releasing the patterns that have kept us stuck into the looping patterns that we play out. It's looking at our shadow and saying, hey, this thing that's looming in my shadow that's saying you're not worthy, that's saying I don't know, I'm afraid, I suck, I'll never be able to do it. They can do it. It's not for me. The prostitute being like, oh my God, I'm, like you sell yourself short, right? Or I undervalue myself, or they're never going to pay me what I'm worth, or all of that kind of stuff, right? And so we dig into that. And so then we raise the vibrations. And this is what I was saying with Healy, like it's easy because you just push a button and you raise your vibrations. And when we start to raise our vibrational level, we rise above all of this noise is what ends up happening, right? And then we can start to match our vibration to that which we desire. So when I talk about vibration, I think it's really important to talk about this too, that we can look at something called the scale of consciousness by David Hawkins. David Hawkins wrote what's it called? The power of, no. Just go look up David Hawkins and the scale of consciousness. Blanking out on the book actually. But on Google you'll find it. And basically what it is it looks at the fact that our emotions, if we're looking at grief, guilt, shame, fear, dogma, all that kind of stuff, they're really low level vibrational feelings. And so they keep us stuck in a low vibration. And generally speaking, most of us are walking around in that vibration, unless we've made a choice to shift it. Unless we've made a choice to say, I no longer want to feel, care about, buy into guilt, shame, dogma, around money, right? Because how many people here listening do you know that have carried all of it? I mean, even again, from the perspective of wealth, I've carried guilt, shame, and dogma around having it, not having it, losing it, the rules of how I'm supposed to play the game, right? Doesn't matter where we come from, we still carry that energetic or that emotional vibration. And so in order to be able to magnetize and hold more wealth, we have to shift that into, as you move up the scale of consciousness, you get into love, joy, peace, abundance, bliss, enlightenment. And ultimately, I believe wholeheartedly, like if we could move this entire planet up to the level of 500, love, then the entire world would be different. Because what would happen if we were literally all, not just like, oh, I love you, right? But you actually felt and came from a space of unconditional love.
I love that, and literally, I love
Literally.
that. Literally, I love that because right, I didn't grow up with a love of money. I just, for me, there was so much shame around it. It was the thing I couldn't have, and a lot of times, my dad would say, if I didn't support you, you wouldn't do all the theater and all the bullshit, So, like literally, and you won't. So what if you don't get to do what you love for money? You have to make money.
Dogma,
And
right?
what?
The dogma, the rules.
Dogma rules, right? And so it wasn't until I was like, I shifted that for sure and started loving what I do and loving the process and loving when I see money come in on my, like Stripe or whatever, or PayPal, like watching that come in. And I started doing this thing where like like whenever I meet my monthly goal, I'll go and buy myself a little something, and it's like, because then it's like a fun way of being like, okay, let's like share the wealth, but also like, what a fun like little thing to be excited about. And, like now I have to think about like, what am I going to buy for myself? Because it's easy to pay for the kids, right? Like it's so easy to throw money that way. But like I will put my last like $500 on my child over like a $50 shoe or something, for myself. Um, but I think bringing in love, and I do an exercise now, and I think you've talked about it, where I do like as if, where like throughout the week, I will like in meditation, I'll sit there and I'll be like, and I just see that number coming in, and it fills me with so much joy. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's awesome. I made my week. And let's say it's like Wednesday or something or Thursday. I'm like, oh my God, I made all this money. This is amazing. I love life. Right. So that's that vibrational stuff that you're talking about too, right? Like where you're just walking around with such a better energy and more attractive to money. Can I do the same thing with dating? Because I gotta tell you, because you say why not? Because on the sites, on the Bumble, I'm not doing well. Nothing, like nothing.
Well, do you
What
want a live interview?
yes, I'm curious because you're talking about attracting things into your life. Like I want to see if it holds true in this other realm.
Of course it does, but then again, you still have to go look in the shadow parts of yourself of where you don't want to accept that love, or where you don't want to open your heart, or where you have fears around whatever it is of repeating old patterns.
I don't like the shopping aspect of it. I don't like that there's so many, like it's too many people for me. I just want, like, women. I just want specifically. And that, no offense there, but it's too many women. Like, I don't like everyone.
You don't have to. But you also have to go shopping when you want to spend your money too.
Well, I did, what I did this week? I went around, like, I went, what?
There's a lot of houses to buy. There's a lot of shoes to buy. There's a lot of. Anyway, go on.
No, that's right. But it's like, so I did this weekend. I went for the first time in 7 months. I went to the mall, like indoors. I know you're gonna make fun of me. I went inside the mall. I wore my mask, and I went to all the stores. And I was like, I'm gonna go in with the mindset that I can afford everything. And I'd never done that before. For me, in the past, like years ago, I'd go in and be like, J. Crew or Nordstrom, or and be like, oh, I can't afford that. That's better than me. And here I was like, wait, no, I could buy that. I could buy that. That's not. I could buy that right now. Shit, I don't care. And I still went back to H&M because that's my favorite place to shop.
100%. It's interesting. Like one of the things I tell people that I have in the past and still tell people, one of the great ways that you can increase your, I'd say, abundance attractor in that way, like to feel abundant all the time, is carry, it depends on where you're at financially, right? So when I first heard this, it was like carry extra 50 or $100 in your wallet. So I always have an extra $100 bill in my wallet, and it's not to be spent. It's like I can always spend it if I want to, but abundantly I don't have to. I know people who will carry $3,000 in their wallet because that's what it is for them to be like, I know I can spend this at any given point in time, and I'm always abundant, and I always have this money. And it's interesting because it's like it depends on where you're at as to how much you want to carry. I'm like, I just don't want to have that much bills in my wallet. But it's that same feeling of if I want it, I can buy it. I just choose not to. And it's an interesting thing too. Like I was actually talking to someone who's in one of my mastermind circles with recently, and she was having like this meltdown around, oh, my sister wanted me to go to this hotel and it was really expensive and I didn't want to spend the money and I could have spent the money, and is that me being like unabundant or blah, blah, blah. And I think it's really important here because when we can spend the money doesn't mean we have to. And that's the piece of holding wealth, right? Like that's where we get to look at what is our value and what's important to spend money on. Like, of course I could go spend money on DVDs. I could go spend money on like that used to be my thing, like DVDs. I was like, I always wanted to get movies.
Yeah, I was like, DVDs, what? What's that?
It was back in the day when I was like, I'm going to go spend my money. That would be on, I was like, I want to go watch this movie. And so, but it could be anything, right? It could be like, you could have the money to go on a private jet. Doesn't mean you have to. You could have the money to go buy the Jimmy Choo shoes. Doesn't mean you have to. You could have the money to go buy the $1 million house. Doesn't mean you have to, right? And it becomes like really aligning to where are your values around money and what is it that you desire. So for me, like I would talk about like, we want to start to hold on to our wealth and start to create savings and stuff like that. So it's like, sure, I could spend that money. And like when I started planning for our trip, which didn't take very long because I didn't take very long to plan it, but when we went overseas for 4 months, I think we started thinking about it about 4 or 5 months before we left. And so at that point, it was like, go to dinner or have a hotel room. Go to dinner or have a really cool experience on a holiday. Go out to blah, 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 or right? And so it's just a choice. And when we start to look at things like that as just a choice, then we become way more, again, we coming back to sovereign around our money. We make logical, rational choices around money and sovereign. And so we were talking about before, which I don't think I actually finished saying, but like sovereignty in this day and age and this new wealth, right? It is about looking at not only our relationship to money, and again, like if you start to dig into the corrupt banking system, then you'll see that we don't actually have sovereignty in our money there. They actually own our money. And right now, I will tell you this too. Here's another little secret. As we move into some pretty crazy ass times financially in this world, there was a law that was passed 2 years ago, and I'll start backwards a little bit. When we had the recession and the global recession, 2008 global financial crisis, we had something called the bailout. And the banks got bailed out by the government because they couldn't afford to be around, right? And in 2018, they created a law that is now called a bail-in law. I think it's 2018. And in this bail-in law, it means that the banks can actually freeze our funds as human beings that have money in the bank to utilize it to rescue themselves. Oh, far out! It's not safe, right? And we are not sovereign beings in that if they can do that, right? And I think it's so important for people to know that we're not. We think we are.
Dude, I'm getting a new mattress. That's it.
Yeah, but then, right, and this is where it's a bit crazy, because then we are also in this time where Corona is forcing people into this cashless society. True? Like, how many places can we go now that they're like, we don't accept cash? And there's been a big debate about this, back and forth. Like, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing to have a cashless society? If we can't store our money in cash, and if we take it all out and put it in our mattresses, then what when it becomes a cashless society? That becomes null and void. Right? So we are not our own sovereign beings. That's why I've started doing all this research around the digital currency space. I mean, I know it's people are up in arms around it, but when you start to look at the logic of this, you cannot be sovereign in the banking system, and you can be sovereign in the digital currency space. And so if we look at that not only from a financial perspective, but from our own personal perspective of being sovereign in our own energy, and our own choices and our own beliefs and our own mindset, like that is the work right now, is looking at how can we be sovereign in all of our own decisions about what we do and really make aligned choices versus doing what we think we're supposed to do because someone told us to sometime. And we've been conditioned to listen to the powers that be for so many years and have given our power away around our health, around our money, around our relationships, around how a relationship looks, right? We're supposed to be, I mean, I'm not even going to get into this conversation, but we're supposed to be in like a whole marriage where we have kids and we live together and blah, 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 blah. Does that even matter? Is you as a sovereign being, is that how you desire to be? And like, if you start to question every single aspect of your life and go, in my own self, in my own being, is this what I desire? Your life can fully change when you start to like go, oh, no, this isn't. And then how do I take the steps? What do I need to shift within myself? Where do I need to look? And what do I need to, I'm going to say, kill off, right? Because in the shadow, it's like you're killing off these dark pieces of yourself that no longer serve you because it was like a conditioned belief or a trauma or something like that that kept us playing in something that doesn't serve us and out of sovereignty.
Keri, this is beautiful. We set out to do a shorter form interview today, and you just like came full circle. You talked about like what like the big governing bodies that keep us small, and then how we integrate that in our lives, how we internalize it, right? And then we talked about like tools to get out of that in terms of bringing in love, raising vibration, creating more joy, creating better practice of when to spend money, when not to spend money, how to spend it, where to direct it. And then ultimately, it all comes down to fucking just being like, what is true for me? What is right for me? What is my belief system? Dude, that was great, Keri. We did it. We set our, we succeeded. Mission completion. Mission completion. How do people find you, Keri? Because you do workshops, you do coachings, you do so many cool things. How do people find you?
So funny because my website's fully getting redone right now, but you could probably go over there. I don't know what it looks like at the moment because it's probably who knows where. It's probably in the middle of who knows where we land, but it's KeriNorley.com. And I'll spell my name. Really, the best place to find me is on Facebook. It's where I love to spend my time, which is KeriNorley.com, but also Facebook.com/Keri Norley 1. Or you can email me, Keri@KeriNorley.com.
Keri, I'm so proud of you. It's just so funny because we grew up in the same hood. We grew up in the same area in the suburbs of Chicago, and we never knew each other until we came here, and you're one of my favorite people. You're one of my besties. I'm just going to say it. You're one of my besties.
But you have to, wait, if you're going to tell that story, Ron Ben Joseph, you actually have to tell the whole story. Because Ron Ben Joseph actually lived in Australia, and I actually lived in the same suburb, and my brother actually went to school with Ron Ben Joseph when he moved to the suburb in Chicago that I lived in. And then eventually I moved to Australia for 15 years. And now we found each other in Denver. We've had the craziest, and we're both Jewish people.
Like, it's just so funny when you meet people that have that same thing. So it's just like,
to be a Jewish person from the North Shore of Chicago and have lived in Australia. It's not very common.
It's not very common. It's not.
Mm-mm.
Crazy times. All right, Keri, I adore you. Great job today. Mwah. High five.